Here.
Melissa Clark. Here, sorry, I was doing Remember I said have it together, just kidding. Marion Dwyer. Lisa Cavaluna. I'm here too. Kevin McCullen, absent with notice. Diane Salter.
Here.
Dr. Outlaw.
Here.
And is not here. Dr. David. All right.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda, we have our bond project list.
It's okay, I'm gonna come up here, and I'm gonna just scroll us through on our thing here. So this is the list that we've been working on for, I don't know how many months, but we've been working on this for a long time. It's a list of projects that we need to do as a district, and it's developed into our list for a potential bond that will take place later this year, pending board approval. So tonight our task is to look at the projects that are on here. Most of them you've already seen, we've already gone through, but we have, because of the refunding that you did last month, we have additional dollars that we can spend. So we have to make some decisions about what additional projects you'd like to add. Would you like me to go through building by building just to give you just an overview?
I would.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it need a good reminder.
So, district-wide, these are things that are things that happen with any bond. You have to have contingency in any project. 10% is the number that the architect recommends. There's architect fees. There's construction management fees for the people that actually do the work. There's bond issuance. There's all these things, just like you would have like in a mortgage when you're buying a house. Those are these type of fees that are in this category. Plus, we're building in some bus replacements here that we think would be a good expenditure of dollars in this area. So, Harvey Swanson is the featured school, as we've talked about in the past. Includes everything from playgrounds to cosmetic, doors, parking lots, lockers.
The purchase of the buses, that would be an outright purchase, so
Right.
they would be owned.
We would own
This isn't a
those
lease.
just
This
like
isn't
we own
financing
them.
them over time like for a lease or anything, these are owned.
And
Okay.
there's a certain number of buses we need to purchase every year as they get older.
Right, understood.
Yeah, it's like,
Got
but
it.
it fills that.
Yep, rolling.
Yeah,
every
exactly,
time
it's the
buses.
rolling, exactly. So Harvey Swanson's the big featured piece here, all kinds of cosmetic type things, as well as some of the practical things like parking lot, roofs. There's some things with technology, cameras. It gets a big chunk of the projects would be at Harvey Swanson. And there's two other areas that are also on the same campus. The preschool wing, which was on the H.D. Burt side of that building. Obviously, preschool, playground, technology, and then we're looking at replacing quite a bit of the fencing along Varsity Drive. Right now, it's really high fencing. It's like a grayish fence. It really looks like almost like prison-like a little bit. And we'd like to make it look a little bit more welcoming. And on the preschool side, the fence still has to be high, but maybe doing some sort of nicer fence so that it looks attractive to go with the attractive equipment inside. Oakwood also,
Oh, can I?
yeah.
Just because we're still there. The playground, is that replacing the castle or adding it? Like, what does that mean?
So there would be some discussions that would have to take place around what that money would go towards.
Okay.
So this right here is a placeholder of a dollar amount.
Okay.
I think we would want to get feedback and we want to talk with people specifically about whether it's swings or a slide or how it's going to work.
Wasn't sure how permanent was on it.
And I wasn't too sure, I guess I didn't think of the castle. I was thinking that other end, closer to the varsity, the old varsity field, that when I see the,
That's preschool.
that's a preschool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the preschool. And then, yeah.
Okay, but she said by the castle, which is down at
Yeah,
the
it's
other
down
end.
the other
Correct.
Castle's
Yeah.
the biggest thing I hear from parents is
Save it.
issues with the castle. So I just didn't know. No, I don't
We
even
have put,
know.
we put quite a bit of money into the castle already to bring it up to. So now, one of the options on the castle is to knock the whole thing down. So that's something, But,
How would
yeah.
you do that? Don't they play on it anymore?
They do, and that's why we've been trying to do a lot of things.
It's
in that
starting to
area.
get some age to it, and with the age, the wood starts splintering and those sorts of things. Now, we put a coat on it, but that's a maintenance thing from that point on, because you always have to put that on every couple of years. So next year, there's probably likely that we'd have to, in the spring, put another coating on it.
So you power wash it and then do it?
Yeah.
Does that answer? Yeah. Okay. And then at Oakwood, the parking lot replacement is a big one. Their playground technology, security cameras, and then a big one here is when Oakwood was built in 2009 officially. It only had 18 classrooms in it, and there's a lot of space and things there. So this would be making it, having us have 2 additional classrooms at Oakwood. They are at capacity. Where we're running into problems is things like special education classrooms, support classrooms, and if they were to grow in certain areas, we really do need the 2 extra classrooms there. So that's a functionality one there. So any questions at all about Oakwood? We've talked about a lot of these things before. The middle school, it's, we're looking at doing some things, creating a STEM lab there, roof repair technology and cameras. But the middle school would not be the biggest, receiver on this one. Again, Hardis-Swanson would be the top portion there. High school comes in a couple different areas here. The high school, the roof, there's just we've talked about roofs endlessly in this district, but this gets us through the next couple of big fixes, long-term fixes for the roofs across the district. Technology cameras, the STEM, looking at some more upgrades in that area to really make it as cutting edge as we can make it. And then there's a couple walls. There's one in the front entrance that's crumbling, and that needs to get fixed. So it's a wall that juts out as you walk in the high school entrance to the right. That needs to be replaced. But those are some of the ones that are general high school. Obviously, we've just done the energy bond to do a lot of the high school work. So athletics, we talked a lot about baseball field. That would be moving to a field that is right here. Out here there's a baseball field. We'll be converting that into the varsity baseball field. There's some significant costs that go with that, from drainage to dugouts, all kinds of different things, but that's one of the things that would be on that list. Additionally, would be putting an outdoor restroom that would be right out here, right outside on the other side of this wall here, because teams have practices and things like that, and there's no restrooms outside. And so it would be something that coaches could have keys to and whatnot. We'd have an outdoor restroom area on this side over here. Additionally, there is a sidewalk over by the soccer concessions area that is not handicap accessible. We really do need to make it handicap accessible so that somebody can, make it there. Just weight room flooring. Turf replacement has been on our list since before I came to the district. But that's coming up, 24, 25. That would be at the end of the bond where we would replace the turf. It typically is replaced anywhere from 11 to 15 years. This one it'll be about 13 years this year. So it's definitely something that we need to get fixed. It's in really good shape. Additionally, grass and drainage for the soccer field. The soccer field is it's a nice area, but the field itself needs a lot of work. The grass is clumpy, and there's kids spraining ankles and things like that. We need to do some good work on that field there. Is there any athletics questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
So, naive question, bleachers have motors
To drive them
to
out,
drive them
like
in
as they
and
go
out?
in
Okay.
and then.
in and out? That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
But before, did we talk about improvements to the bleachers themselves versus the motors, or am I not remembering?
We've invested heavily in making all of our bleachers safe, but now it's the motors that go in and out.
Okay.
There's ongoing costs associated with that, but the motors are starting to get old and bleachers at the high school.
So that leads me to one other feature that applies, I think still applies to the middle school and the high school. We talked about this last year, I think, that the railings there's the spot for the insert for the railings on the stairs. And it leads me now as to that conversation, but I think it
We
was,
talked about it,
right,
that they
I'm
weren't
watching a
necessarily
lot of
put in,
grandparents
they
come
were
in.
heavy and things like that. So
yeah,
I had to check back. I know when we talked about it, it was like
Right.
3 years ago, we said, you gotta do it. It was. And we said, you have to do it, so I think we should maybe check out, make sure that we're still doing it. So I know we did it
Yeah.
right after we talked,
yeah.
and
I think, you know, I watched the grandparents come in to various events, and it's,
you need to rail.
I'm throwing it on the grandparents.
No, it's important.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, they're there for a reason.
okay, cool.
On the
I have a
performing
second.
arts, yeah,
I just have a quick question. With the handicap 12 by 12 porch, are we supposed to, like, ADA compliance? Is that something that we have to do because it's to cover our compliance?
That's a two-part question. We should be in compliance with ADA. If we're not in compliance, a lot of the equipment is older. Because it's older, it's grandfathered.
Okay.
But when we remodel and or change the equipment, then it has to come up to ADA standards.
Okay.
And the exception of that is if Joe Community or Joanne Community come up to us and say, listen, I have a child, I want them to be able to get into that location, and they can't, then the school district is obligated at that point to make the accommodations possible for that student at that point.
Thank you.
so there's performing arts things we've talked about, PAC sound. We have some immediate stuff that we'd like to talk about at some point. But their choir room was built, it's got a weird setup to it. You can't do any dancing, or coordinating. It's a really awkward room. It needs to be leveled. We can buy band instruments. There's a variety of instruments that really do need to be upgraded. There's another exterior wall that's being damaged by drainage. And then one of the interesting things, and Lisa, I know you've experienced this firsthand with dance, is we built this nice wing and there's no restrooms on that side of the building at all. So recommending putting some restrooms down in that area, down close to the gates. So any questions on that
Yeah,
side?
just a question on the walls that are crumbling. Is it the bottom section of the wall where the brick is?
Down by the foundation.
Foundation?
Yeah, on the backside of the PAC, you have that sloped area. Well, the rain and the nature has eroded about that much
Well,
of
if we
the.
replace that, I'd like to replace that with stone. not brick. You can replace that. That can be chipped out and replaced with stone. You know, you don't have to replace the whole side.
No, it would be a repair, not replacing the whole wall, but just replacing.
But if you use stone, the stone won't crumble like the brick will again. That's what I'm saying. It'll last forever.
Gotcha.
You guys can connect on that.
Yeah.
Right. On the community side, there's a number of things that are community-based. One is the Varsity Drive area. We use that stadium a little bit. BJB uses it. Their track there needs to be redone. It's really not a good track. The fencing, we had mentioned about fixing that fencing. It was set up to host games. It's got a high fence. It really does look prison-like. We like to make it look welcoming. So when you drive down towards Harbor Swanson, that it's got a beautiful look to it. We just think that would be important. And then we talked a ton about the pool. There's all of the items related to the pool. Any questions on those community items? So all of that together is about, I think it's about 5.1 million at that point. So with the refunding of the bond that we talked about last time, there's additional dollars. January, so it's about 19 million now. It's gone from 18.6 up to 19 million, which is what the new projection is. And that's, again, it's based on rates and all those type of things. So it could fluctuate one month to the next, right? Until it's settled.
School bond loan fund, the interest rates are just continuing to go down, so it added a little bit more.
So about $19 million. So we're proposing some projects that we'd like to have you consider adding on. I'm going to ask Jan and John to talk about adding projects. So we have 1.9 million in contingency. Let's say hypothetically we only have to use 900,000 in contingency. We have $1 million left over. What projects could we invest any additional dollars into? Can we add projects?
Yes.
You can't add new projects.
No, you can't, right, correct. You have to have them in your bond application to be able to put money from the contingency into the project.
So that our approach should be to be reasonable yet over-inclusive.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%, well said. Carry on.
That's exactly-
I already got that, Lisa, just summarized in 5 seconds, so that's perfect. So, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in 5 years, you don't necessarily know what the needs are. The parking lot out here might be fine today, and in 3 or 4 years, it might really start to crumble at that point. And we might say, well, the middle school parking lot is something that really needs to be done, and it might come to the top of the list, but it has to be something on that list.
Is there a time frame after we get the money in the door that,
5 years?
It's supposed to pretty much be within 5 years.
so if we want things to crumble, it needs to happen?
Yeah,
Get your chisel up.
yeah.
I don't think you'll have any problem with that.
So far,
Mother
I think
Nature's
we'll be
helping
good.
us. Got a lot of help.
So,
We have success there. Yeah.
there's a couple that we like to add that are sure things that we're gonna have to spend money on. So we'd like to start with that. Air conditioning is like this recurring thing. It comes back there's always some cost. So this air conditioning rooftop handlers.
The air conditioning rooftop air handlers, we're addressing all the units that are 20 years old and or older. And for a couple of reasons. One is they have old R22 refrigerant in them. And every time we repair them, for whatever reason, they have to have new refrigerant or whatever, it costs $200 a pound of air conditioning, as averse to $20 for the more current product that's on the market. So you can see that over time that does accumulate a lot of money, and they're old and they're prone to go down. You cannot change a system with R22. You have to change the mechanical parts in them. So that, in other words, you have to change out the compressor and the condenser, which is what causes the cooling to happen. You can't just switch the chemical in as they're updated. And you would know that with your own homes when you get new air conditioning.
So these are gonna be costs no matter what, so we'd like to include them if it's okay with the board. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm gonna scan down to other ones. So on this list, you'll see it on there, we have about $2.4 million. It's actually about 2.8 now that we're at 19 million. So about $2.8 million of additional projects that we can add to that list. And keeping in mind what Lisa was just summarized for us about being overly inclusive on some of those, because it doesn't mean you have to do everything on that list. So you run out and you don't have enough money to do the exterior doors. Then you don't do it, and maybe you find another way to fund that part of the project. So these were ones that John came to us
The
with.
exact rule on that is if you have exterior doors across the district at $600,000, you have to address some of the doors. So you have to use some of the money for the doors, but you can do an inventory of what's bad and what isn't bad, and then go back and say, okay, I want to move 500,000 of that because we don't have to replace all the doors. Is that?
So the numbers are fungible among within this list. If something we budgeted for 500,000 for doors becomes 300,000 because thankfully not all of them need replaced or what have you, then we can take that 200,000 and put it toward the parking lot that's going to help.
And I've done just that type of
Okay.
things in other districts.
But what we can't do if we do not have a line item for doors at all, we can't just add 100,000 of doors.
Correct.
We could arguably have one big number at the top and no numbers allocated for purposes of submission and just have a list, knowing that we need separate. I'm saying theoretically,
Yeah.
how to envision this list.
You have to identify the project.
I know that it would be approved,
Okay.
yeah.
They would.
We would have to check with our bond
Yeah, no,
council. I
that
think
was
we
a-
have to have a budget, yeah.
They want the architect to give you as close to the bid
Right,
as
understood. I'm just
possible.
envisioning how to view the list once
Yeah.
we.
But our list must be at the 19 million or whatever it is. We can't do
Correct.
22 million, knowing that we're only getting 19. again, we have to bring some of these numbers down to fit into the budget of what the bond money we would be getting. We can't go over bond, but as long as it's on the list and we're reasonably pricing it, we should be pretty good to go touch all those projects if we have the money.
If the contingency is not used, that's kind of
Yes, and the
our talking,
contingency.
that's our, backup plan. Well, if the contingency is not needed, then we have a budget. This is what we'll spend the contingency money on. That's just what we'll tell them.
So, in theory, I think other than 105D, where it's extra rooms to be air conditioned, we're getting smaller for the next several years. I don't know that we need to do that. Other than that, touching all of those somewhere in our bond application would be great. Obviously, we can't put all those numbers in there, but it would be great to have a placeholder in there for all these projects. For example, let me point to on line, there we go, line 103, lot rooms. If you wanted to do the Cadillac and literally go from ground up, doing tile, restrooms, replacing the showers, all this stuff and making it like a top notch, it would cost $1.8 million to do the boys and the girls. You might decide, you know what, why don't we put a placeholder in there for $600,000? Maybe that's tile and, some other thing, maybe
Bathroom renovation.
changing of the locker rooms. And then if we have contingency left over, you might say, well, let's also replace this and this later on. So some of these are big numbers, but it would be great to be able to have a placeholder for each one of these in that application, at least some dollars allocated, just throwing it out there. Is that something that the board would be okay with?
I'm good.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, what if I see stuff that's not on these? Is this the time?
Yeah.
All right, so what about landscaping? I know we've talked about entrances, but to me, especially, like with Oakwood, you come in and you have that huge entrance and it's like a huge first impression coming up and, I know it all files on the maintenance people to keep up with it. But oftentimes, there's just not enough time to make sure the weeds aren't taller than me. So, what about landscaping?
You can do landscaping.
I would think, though, something like that would be something we would address regardless. If we
Yeah,
get-
true.
We wouldn't wait a year or two. If it's something that's, looks bad, we probably should be addressing it now.
Unless it's like a major, like boulders and things like
No,
that.
I've been here 5 years, so maybe we can talk about that. The weeds
That would
sometimes
be,
get really-
maybe we need
Okay.
to look at the budget.
I had someone approach me about Harvey's Furniture, which I see we're doing a lot with Harvey. And I know that the office furniture was on here, but I don't see like classroom furniture.
Actually, in the extra list, I think I got it here for
It
Amelia.
is
Where
their
are we
update
at?
104.
104.
It's
Well, you
size
have
seven.
The amount over
Number something?
18.6, look at that, Sarah.
printed
Look up.
Right, but no, I see that. I'm wondering why it's not part of like the main part.
Because he added it.
I understand that, but I'm saying like this is the extra, like if we're gonna redo it.
He'll move it in there now if the
Okay.
board agrees.
Okay, so
That's what I'm
then it would be
looking-
bumped up. I think.
Yeah, it would be bumped, I think these would go in those individual school building areas. So like the high
then
school
these
parking
would be
lot
up
should
there.
be moved. But if he wanted to know if we agree with these items,
Yeah.
then he can move them over instead of keeping them as extra.
We can mess with the dollars to figure out, maybe talk with the architect about how to break it down to get to that number, because he might say, you should do 600,000 here, 300, but if we're okay with it, maybe with the allocations, putting a placeholder for all of those,
I agree.
what do you think?
And then, I was gonna say, the new list that we would see is, like Sarah
So
just
then
said,
it would be up
we would
there.
now see Oakwood, you would have, or I'm sorry, Harvey Swanson, you would add another, you would take a line and insert the
Take from
furniture.
here, move them out.
Yeah, whatever your new number may be, because of course we have to have it equal about 19 million.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I agree, I'm good with what we're seeing.
So that's different though than putting like 100,000 in furniture. I think that reduces our 2.4, which I think is a good idea, but it's not discretionary anymore. I think that's what I'm hearing. we would put an actual number for, we would commit to Harvey Swanson
Okay,
furniture.
that's what I was.
I think that's what I'm
Thank you.
hearing, but I'm not
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Yes.
You want to commit to that.
That is what
Yeah.
we're gonna commit to a certain amount, but
Right.
you could add more to it later on, is what we were
We
saying.
want to take it out of the yellow area and bump it up in the main
100%.
area.
Yeah.
All,
That's
yeah, we want to bump all
That's
of
reducing
these.
the discretionary.
We want to bump all of these. and-
Yeah, I want to move them all
But we're
over.
going to put a real number to it. I think Sarah would like a real number to that, not just a fake number.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, I just want to make sure.
I think what I'd like to see a little bit too, and maybe it's the same thing, is some, maybe, I know that there's some priorities sort of overlap, but it would be in some form of a priority that the bottom items, that if we don't have the money because we went over in some of the doors or the fencing, that we would know that we may not be getting the new furniture at RV, only because we did run out of money, but again, you would think we could pay for that anyway.
So within each
Like a
category,
priority.
you want them prioritized.
Sort of a priority.
Because like, I'm not worried about the locker rooms at 1.8, but like the Harvey furniture, if we're gonna redo it, to me would be more of a priority.
So put a
Then
real
the
number in that
locker,
line, and then maybe lockers, put 200,000.
Right, yeah.
Not a
Right.
number. Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
You're really probably tired of me bringing this up, but the entrance to the high school gymnasium and pool area, I still think it's pretty underwhelming. And when you compare it, for example, and I mean this in the most complimentary fashion possible, when you walk up to our football athletic stadium and even on your way down to soccer, that whole segment, you can walk by the away team crowds and hear them comment about, whoa, you know, this is, because it is fantastic.
It is.
It's comment worthy, it's beautiful. I'm challenged to think of another school, you know, that we play or otherwise that I've seen that is that nice. Don't get the same effect when you approach our entrance. One in part because it's up the hill and tucked in the corner. And I know some strides have been made, but I guess and I don't even know what I would suggest. If I thought about it more, I could probably come up with, you know, try and be helpful instead of just complaining. But I think that it's like, wow. Oh.
Yeah, I agree with her. It's kind of like a, like you.
It
Well,
looks like
it's
a back door.
and confusing to our guests.
Yes, it's
I
very.
think when you pull into our high school, if I was a guest, I would pull in and be like, okay, I kind of see cars straight ahead going to the right up on a hill. What is that? Yeah, I could go straight. That seems easy. Let's go straight. Oh, wait, what's this parking lot over here? It's very, it's not welcoming. It's not being good host to our guest. And never mind, again, for some reason, grandparents are on my mind. You know, grandparents come in and, you know, I've got my dad swearing in Portuguese. And, you know, I got, where am I supposed to go? You know, so it's a common issue. And then beyond that, toward when it gets icy, and that little hill that inclines, I have no idea what to do about that. But I also fear for, you know, I was watching a mom during basketball season, you know, arms full, 3 kids under 3, you know, second family watching the older child play basketball, and she's just like, whoa, 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 you know, because and that's in light of everybody on maintenance and everybody else's good efforts to maintain it. I'm not being derogatory toward anybody. It just presents aesthetic, safety. It just needs a little something, needs some love. So if that could make its way, it's a constant.
Are you talking more from the walkway up to where the Distinguished Alumni area is? Are you talking more like
It's the
on
spot like where you're
by the
walking in
tennis
and you're
court?
going in like into like the gym and then like the pool entrance. When you
Yes,
Yeah,
we go in
the
the
distinguished
on the
alumni
left and
area.
the.
It's that door as you're heading toward their wondrous entrance to the football stadium. There's that door that goes up on a hill
Yeah.
that you go into.
Oh, I thought you
Into
meant
the
on
honest
the
gyms.
side with the parking lot, like the double entrance there, like the central office side?
No.
No, this is
One
the
in the
side.
back side where the
That's
softball field.
confusing too.
Well, this is why I rein it in and say, no, the minute I turn right or left into our service
Turn
drive.
left. And it's right up there.
Gotcha.
Right, but hold on. The minute you turn right or left into our service drive, there needs to be, and I know there is a sign, I'm not suggesting there's nothing, but there needs to be more direction for our guests about where we're going. That's all. And then once you get, I'm specifically talking about, I guess it's the
I
back of the
understand,
building,
yeah.
I never give a proper direction. But the back of the building, it's for as much pride as we have in all of our athletics, we need to reflect it similar to how the football, soccer area is reflected. Sorry.
No, maybe we can follow up on that real quick.
Sure, yeah.
Just
Whatever you
plugging
want.
my head all the way around it.
Whatever you-
That'd be great.
A lot of babbling there, so.
And I didn't know if part of that would extend technically as part of the parking lot, but I doubt it.
I could do.
You know, you could say it's part of the parking lot going up the hill, because the trucks do actually drive up there at times, I think. But if I've got it right, it's right over there by the softball field you're talking.
Yes.
Yep, I call it the back side of the building.
Got it. I'm just trying to get specific so we can, like,
Right.
Yeah.
what is the
That-
solution?
You know what I need to do is go, instead of zigging in and out of games, I need to go walk and take notes and be more helpful, and I will do that.
No, maybe we just talk after, so. Cool. Great. This sounds awesome. Yes?
Okay, I have one more, sorry. The greenhouse, which I know we've talked, and if you don't have somebody, a teacher that's willing to like really take on the greenhouse in the high school, but it's not functional right now, so, you know, if we could make it functional, because who knows, maybe in a year we'll have, you know, somebody that's like, ooh, yes, I want that, I want to take it on, I want to bring the kids in on this.
Maria, are you jotting this
It's,
down?
Yeah.
Maria's taking the notes, so thank you.
I love the idea of a
About
greenhouse, I
10,
know.
about 10,
Do
12,000.
we
do-
Think it's a thing.
I actually have to ask, we have an existing greenhouse, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I did get a phone call from a lady that lives in our district, and part of her research for physician assistant was this class at schools and nutrition, and she came up and said, I told her, go to Dr. Outlaw. I would love for our kids to be using it, and I didn't tell her there was an existing
I
greenhouse.
believe it's not functional right now.
Yeah, it's, yeah, it'd probably be about 10, 12,000 to get it fully up to speed. The problem with it is, and this is experience from being in Novi and then the same thing in Grosse Pointe, the key is you have to have somebody on staff that year after year after year is the point person to make sure that it goes. Otherwise, it will be great for a year, and then the kids graduate, or people lose interest, and then then it goes downhill, and you end up with where we're at right now. So it has to be a program.
Yes, somebody has to.
And it has to be, if it's a program, it's sustainable. I would love to see it. One of my first meetings that I had when I came here was a group of parents talking about starting. We were all go, but they ran into the problem, you know, with who's going to run it, who's going to operate it. And so, no, I think it's a great suggestion. I would
I
love
mean,
to
at
see
least,
greenhouse.
even if it's not operational with somebody taking point on it, if it's at least, if somebody came in and said, yes, wow, this, you know, works. Because right now, I mean, it's.
Is it used for food or nursery type stock? What was it, what was the intention of the greenhouse?
Well, typically your greenhouse, like in a high school, is going to be connected to your curriculum. So
Right.
where I was at, and I'll just use Grosse Pointe North for example, we had a great greenhouse, and we had a teacher that ran it. He taught earth science, and the students had responsibilities, and they used it all the time. It was a lab, and so that was, to me, that was the ideal use of it.
Yeah.
We put one in at Grosse Pointe South when I was principal there. Again, it was the teachers that did it, and they had plants and things. They took classes there, and they would work and do things. And that's what you want. You want it to be integrated with the curriculum.
Right.
You know, that's the best.
Which maybe somebody just needs to see it operational, and then they're like, yeah, that's great.
Might,
Yeah.
might send them
Bring me in, yeah.
Sure.
Jan, how often do you have to report on this? If you said we have to be complete 5 years, do you have to do like an annual reporting?
The auditors will, or plant will look at that every year. Yeah. The state, I've never known them to come down, but our auditors will keep us
On track, and then eventually have to give a final to the
Yep,
state or
yep.
something.
Yeah, like when I started in 2012, that would have been in the 6th year of the 2006 bond. There was still a little bit of money. So it's, you know, it's not everything spent, but most of it has to be spent.
Okay, Sean's got it.
Ken?
Yes, you said Oakwood's maxed out now for kids? Is that
Not
right?
for kids. We have room for more kids. It's the number of classrooms. So if you had an average class size that was, let's say, 27 or 28, you could get more people in there. Their average class size is like 23 to 25 right now. So you can fit more kids into the classrooms that we have, but we have 18 classrooms that are using 18 rooms.
Using
And then-
18 rooms.
And then there are a couple of special education areas that are like smaller. They're not full classrooms, so it's pretty tight in there, you have multiple teachers, it's not ideal.
How much room do we have in Harvey
Lots.
See, like right now in fifth
Why
grade.
can't they move over there?
So, we've had some conversations on it, but there's special education in every building in the entire state, every public school in the state has special education. We have to have spots where we can support students, because when you get to special education, you have some students that are very high needs, that, you think of a student that might be, but probably most of your special needs kids, you don't even know that they're special needs. They just need a little leg up, they're struggling with some reading, like dyslexia, or they have some sort of math computation thing. So they have to have a place where they can go work with people, and they're, 90% of the time, they're in regular classrooms.
So you don't really have to put special education in Harvey, you can just take regular kids and put them over there, right? In Harvey Swanson?
Oh, you mean like
Yeah.
realign the district
Yeah.
over?
I mean, can you,
Or
is that,
choose to do
is that an alternative?
Sure, we could choose to do that.
If we got lots of room over there, I mean, I'd rather use the room that we have, you know? But,
And
if you absolutely need 2 more classrooms, which is almost $1 million, you know, it's a lot of money.
To be,
Something to look at.
so like, my daughter's in fifth grade at Oakwood, and there's only 2 fifth grade classes. This is a small graduating class. They'll go up to 6th grade next year. Then you'll have 3 classes per grade over there, plus you have junior kindergarten, so because kindergarten, and so we'll be short next year, right? With the
So what will happen is there's
classrooms?
a computer lab. The reality is computer labs are a thing of the past. It's having labs just doesn't really make sense as you look to the future. And everybody else will talk about that. But so one of the labs will become a classroom. So that'll be the 19th, and that's where we'll be maxed out. It really has to do with special education support. That's where the rooms.
And this question's for John. John, I see roof repair for all the schools, but Oakwood roof still pretty good shape? Or-
Yes. It's just remedial stuff that you have to do at this point, yeah. At 2006, I think, or 2009, it was implemented. So if you extrapolate that out to 20 years, it'd be 2029 before you would probably have to look at that.
Just was curious.
Okay, anybody else, any questions, concerns, what's on the list? Okay, next we got public comments and questions. I don't see any. Okay. Yeah, just in case. None? Okay, now can I get a motion to go to closed session for contract negotiations?
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve to enter a closed session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations.
Support.
Okay, and if I could get a roll call vote, please, Melissa?
Sarah Allen?
Yes.
John Chartier?
Yes?
Melissa Clark? Yes. Marion Dwyer? Ms. Caluna?
Yes.
Diane Salter?
Yes. Okay, all in favor said yes, and we'll be in closed session till 6:30.
Okay.
Melissa Clark here. Marion Dwyer? Here. Ms. Caluna? Here. Linda Holland absent with notice. Diane Salter?
Here.
Dr. Outlaw?
Here.
Jan Meek? Here. Dr. Day? Here.
Okay, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first on our agenda, we have the superintendent's report.
So I'm going to invite our proposal directors up here to introduce some new staff members. We voted on them last month, but we added 4 new staff members at the end of summer, and they're going to introduce some new employees to the district. Diane, you want to start us off?
Sure.
All right.
I'd like to, I'd like to introduce our new preschool teacher, Chelsea View, and She was previously with us as a,
Wait, is there something that's not,
I'll just talk about.
Just speak without.
Yeah.
I have a cool voice. It was working.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Chelsea, why don't you come on over, please? And then what I'm talking about, Chelsea is our new preschool GSRP teacher. She was an associate teacher for the last 2.5 years, and then she finished her student teaching last year, and now she's eligible to be a teacher. And there was an opening because one of these sweet ladies took one of my teachers. So, we did that. So Chelsea, maybe you can just share about where you came from and where you finished your schooling.
I'm Chelsea. I graduated in my undergrad from Central Michigan, but I have a master's from U of M Clinton, a master's in elementary education from Grand Canyon University, and that's where I most recently graduated from.
so
And I live here in Ortonville.
oh, great, okay, welcome.
And I have another teacher, Haley Lane, and she wasn't able to make it today. She's our high school resource teacher, and she comes to us from Hawaii. She was originally from the south world and went there for 2 years and worked at a mental health facility and did the educational program there. So she lots of great knowledge that we've hired. So
I hope that gets in the paper, how people from Hawaii are coming here.
yes, yeah, came back home.
All right.
So.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so this is Catherine Zilke, and she is most recently employed in our building as a first grade teacher to be Danielle Templin's spot. But before that, for the last 2 years before, she took over our interventionist role. So she's been an assistant teacher working with Jessica Hebel, mostly in the area of literacy with our students that need that kind of support. And before that, she was involved as a volunteer in my first grade classroom right after her son Julian was born. So she's been really dedicated to our district for a really long time. Her kids go to school here, and this is Catherine.
Hi.
Hi, welcome, Catherine.
Thanks.
Thank you, and I see you got the note where the light front blush pink.
Yes. I also have a 6th grader in middle school as well. I just wanted to say that. So a 6th grader and an 8th grader, and as Coy said, I've been here a while, so can't get rid of me now. So
Oh, great, welcome, I'm glad you stayed.
Thank you.
All right. And
Okay, so I'm super excited to have Beth Kennedy join our kindergarten team this year. And Beth has been in Brandon, she started her 8th year this year. And she started out as an interventionist, and I actually worked with Beth a couple of years going into it when I was a literacy coach. So this year she did 4 years at GSRP. So she went from preschool to kindergarten. So do you want to say anything about yourself?
Just that I feel like I've really connected with families in the community over the last 7 years. So I'm just looking forward to continuing that and helping families and just building those relationships when their kids are first starting out. And I just realized how important it is as a parent to just setting that foundation.
Thank you very much, and welcome all of you.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Okay, next, public comments and questions on agenda business. Okay, I have it. Hey, Mr. Warren, you're here to talk about agenda business? Is it?
I already wrote it down.
Okay, well, that'll be at the end. Okay. Next, if I could have,
I'm gonna have to leave. I got my kids out of the car. I appreciate it though. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, next I have, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? You hear that beep? Oh, sorry about that. I'm sorry. All those in favor for the approval of the consent agenda say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed say no. The motion passes. Okay, information and discussion items. Board of Education Committee reports. Does anybody have anything to report? I don't. Okay. Next will be the finance report with Jean Meek.
Yep, tonight, Plant and Rand are here. Come on up. My report is the audit report. We're presenting a 2018-19 audit. We have Paul Bryant, partner from Plant and Rand, and Chris Kasab, who's our the manager on our site.
All right.
Chris, is that turned on?
Yes, I can point it at the, I'm Perfect.
Well, thank you for having us. Members of the audience, administration, as well as Board of Education, thank you very much for having us. What we're going to do is, as Jan mentioned, walk through your results for the June 30, 2019 year. The same thing that's on the board that you'll see here is what you have in front of you. So we'll be able to walk through that information with you. Please, as always, ask questions as we go along. If you have any, we're more than happy to be able to answer those for you. Chris is going to start out basically on page 1 and walk through your financial results for the current year.
So our presentation is going to focus mainly on the general fund, which is the district's primary operating fund, as you know. So this first slide here presents the income statement as of for the year ended June 30, 2019. So this is really capturing all of the general fund revenue and expenditures for the period from July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019. And this is looking at the final amended budget compared to the actual as of year end. So as you can see in that middle column there, total revenue of $25.6 million, which came in just under budget by about $125,000. I'm going to skip this other financing uses line for just a second and move on to expenditures. So total expenditures out of the general fund were $25 million, which came in just under budget by $180,000. And that middle line there, other financing uses, this really captures transfers in and transfers out of the general fund between some of the other funds. And so really the big item here is a transfer out of the general fund, which was intentional to kind of clear out the surplus in the general fund. And there was about a $700,000 transfer out of the general fund to the newly created IPA fund and the energy bond fund, which is money that was transferred out of the general fund to fund future principal and interest payments for those two new lines of debt that were taken out this year. And so absent that transfer, the general fund would have had an operating surplus of about $700,000.
Before we go here, one thing so when we're showing that you're under budget for the revenue, a lot of that, most of the time, is because of timing differences, especially with your federal programs. Expenses, even though they're budgeted for, they don't occur as timely, they occur subsequent to year end. So that's why you'll see really the difference underneath. And in subsequent slides, one of the things we'll concentrate on is you'll see you're also under budget for your expenditures for the current year. So really, where I always tell people to look is the net change of fund balance. You budgeted not to add anything to your bottom line, and you actually did that. If you think about your own home budget, you basically came in on how you budgeted, which is in a large institution like a school, that's pretty hard to do most of the time unless you are actually tracking and doing what you're supposed to do throughout the year and not getting into, which we see a lot, you're not getting any surprises. And so you're ending up exactly where you were talking about, where you were expecting to be for your final budget. The other thing, as Chris mentioned, was if this had not been budgeted, you actually did have a surplus for the year of approximately $700,000. But what that was done is to be transferred out to make future debt payments. So it's being put aside so you don't have to do it at a later date. So again, you've planned appropriately and budgeted just as you thought you would throughout the year.
So these next slides will take a deeper dive into what's behind some of the revenue and expenditures for the year. So this next slide captures a breakout of the general fund revenue for 2019 compared to 2018.
So starting with that top line there, federal revenue came in at just under $1 million, which was about equal to prior year's amount of $960,000. And so federal revenue would primarily include some federal grants such as Title I, Title II, and IDEA. The next line there would be local revenue at $3 million compared to last year's amount of $3.1 million, so a slight decrease there. And local revenue would primarily consist of property taxes that the district collects. State revenue came in at $20.3 million compared to $20.2 million, so a little bit of an increase from that last year. And the main driver behind this would be a couple things. So mainly in the state revenue would be your foundation allowance, which is the per pupil amount, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But also one thing to keep in mind in that state revenue line of 20.3 is there's $1.5 million that come from the state that's really just a pass-through. It's a retirement funding that's referred to as UAL or 147C. So that's money that you get from the state that just goes right back out into the retirement system. So district really has no control over that. It's just an in and out, but that is included in the $20 million state revenue line that you see there. Inter-district sources, this is primarily revenue from Oakland schools, so the big ticket item there would be the PA-18 money, which I believe is the special ed millage that the county collects and passes through to some of the local districts. And so that total inter-district revenue came in at $1.2 million. And the total of that gets you to the 25.6 in total revenue for the general fund for fiscal 19, which in total was slightly more than what you would have gotten last year by $132,000.
So if you look, one of the things I thought was this is a pretty consistent district revenue-wise, even though your expenses fluctuate. If you were to look, so basically from one year to the next, your total revenue has only increased by less than 1%. But if you think about all the expenses that you have, how they're changing, how healthcare is changing, you can see how slowly your revenue is increasing. Or the other way I've looked at it is, even though it's becoming steady, when we look at your expenses, you'll see how you have worked to hold your expenses steady as well. Even though with this, so really the state revenue you don't have control over regarding that. The local, as Chris mentioned, is property taxes, interest earned, things like that. And then the federal is federal grants for things. So there's not a lot revenue-wise you actually have control over in order to be able to significantly increase this number from year to year going forward. So again, when we talk through with individuals and we look at expenses, it's the pupil count, pupil count, pupil count. Because as you can see, that's dictating your revenue here, and not a lot of things outside of what these are that you have control over.
So the next slide we'll jump into looks at the general fund expenditures by function. And again, we're comparing 2019 expenditures to 2018. So just taking a real big picture look at it, if you just look at that bottom right-hand number, the decrease from last year was $566,000. So like Paul mentioned, revenue slightly increased by just less than 1%, but conversely, you're able to hold your expenses in check and actually decrease that by $566,000, which as a percentage is around 2% total. So the first line we have here is instruction at $14 million compared to about $14 million last year, so no real change there. Instruction expenditures would primarily relate to teacher salaries, wages, benefits, parapros, really any expense that's benefiting the classroom. The next line there at $9.3 million is support services. So this would be for support staff, wages and benefits, social workers, counselors, substitute teachers. And that came in less than last year by almost $300,000. We've got athletics and community services there, pretty self-explanatory. And then the last line item there kind of captures a couple different things. Debt service, which are principal and interest payments, capital outlay, and payments to other public schools was slightly less than last year too, at around $850,000. So we've really taken a high-level look at the expenditures by function for the general fund. We show you this slide every year, and I think this is just a good slide to present how much of the general fund dollars are really benefiting the classroom. And so there's a lot of things that change from year to year, but what is consistent is the amount of, the percentage of dollars that are benefiting the classroom. So for 2019, 56 cents of every general fund dollar spent benefited the classroom. So again, the things like teachers' wages, benefits, supplies, and again, just noting the trend of consistency really hasn't deviated much from that over the last 7 years.
And so big picture and looking at this, one of the questions that usually comes up is one, as Chris mentioned, you can see the consistency, but just remember we were just looking at your revenue where you increased it by less than 1%. So again, you're able to still maintain what you're doing within the classroom. I know it means you have to get creative sometimes in how you do that, but the big picture, you're able to be pretty consistent with the level of education that you're providing to the student. You're a customer base, basically, overall.
So we've talked about revenue and expenses, and really what that boils down to is the change in fund balance. And so because of the transfer that happened out of the general fund to move out the surplus, there was no change in fund balance for 2019. The fund balance is still at $4.1 million, which is a pretty healthy fund balance. But really the only thing that would have changed within that fund balance is the breakout of what's considered unrestricted and what would be considered restricted / non-spendable. So of the $4.1 million fund balance, $2 million of that has been assigned by the board for capital improvements. So you've essentially designated those funds for future capital improvements. So $2 million of that total fund balance cannot be used for anything other than that. Also, there's a small amount of fund balance, about $460,000, that we would consider and classify non-spendable because that's money that's already been prepaid. So it's your prepaid assets. Because that money's already been used for a specific purpose, it's considered non-spendable. And then we've got this chart at the bottom which kind of just looks at the fund balance a couple different ways. And so we look at unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So that 6.68%. So that would have been pretty consistent with last year as well. The other way we look at it is how long would this fund balance last the district on a 365-day school year if there was no additional revenue? So that $4.1 million fund balance would carry you through 24 days of activity. And then conversely, on a 180-day school year, that $4 million fund balance is enough to last 12 days.
So not another dollar coming in. That's basically what that's telling you. How much do I have in or say a lot of times rainy day fund? How much do I have in my rainy day funds in actual dollars, and how many days does that equate to if you were looking at your own bank account? And that's what these equate to basically on a 365-day calendar year, and then also on a 180-day school year, what that is. So if you look at the dollars, yes, they're healthy dollars regarding $4 million overall, but then you also have to look at the typical, what if we have a hiccup of a roof in the wintertime, or a boiler, or anything like that, with no additional dollars. This is kind of what that tells you you have.
So the next two slides I'll refer to as bad news, good news slides. So a little bit of the bad news. Student count is continuing to decrease. So this slide here shows the trend in pupil count over the last 7 years. So you can see it back in 2012-13 at just over 3,000 students. Currently, for this fiscal year, the district was at 2,300 students. So that decreases about 800 students. And so if you take that 800 students lost over the last 7 years, and you multiply that by the current year foundation allowance, which is the per pupil amount that you get from the state, which is $7,871, that would equate to $6.4 million in lost revenue on an annual basis. So if you were just at the same student count that you were 7 years ago, we would have added $6.4 million of revenue to that revenue number we already talked about. And so the change, the decrease from last year in pupil count was 102 students. So if you just take that 102 student decrease times this year's foundation allowance, that would equate to $802,000 of lost revenue from last year, just to kind of put things in perspective. And that $802,000 would roughly equate to about 4% of the state aid revenue. So about a 4% decrease in just the per pupil amount coming from the state.
The thing about lost pupils, people sometimes assume it's $1 per dollar, and it's not. So with those students, they're spread across the district. It's kindergartners, first grade, middle school, high school. Classrooms are still there. The overhead is still there. All of those things, even though you've lost one student here, one student there, and the revenue is gone, but the overall expenses don't really move. That's why I think it's so important, the graph we showed you where you're being consistent and how you're spending within the classrooms itself, even though your student count is going down. That's pretty important to be able to let people know we're doing what we can to be consistent in the education that we're providing overall to our students.
So the next slide, a little bit of the good news. The per pupil amount went up this year. It went up $240 per pupil. So the new foundation allowance for this fiscal year, which is obviously over with, was $78.71, up from $7,600 from the previous fiscal year. The state budget has not come out yet, so we don't know what the upcoming per pupil amount is, but I think the expectation is that it should be going up. We just don't know by what yet.
Or from where it's coming from.
So the good news is it is trending up, which helps offset some of the lost students. But again, some things are going well and some are not going so well, but you can only do what you can control. And that is really all we had. I'll open it up to any questions that you guys have for us.
And again, I'm looking for maybe the timing of things, because there was some more information, like you did for food service, correct? You did our other department.
Yes.
But basically your report is considered a clean, competent.
Yes, so what she's referring to is our opinion.
Yes.
So our opinion overall for the district is what we consider an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. It's the best opinion that we as auditors can give to an entity that we perform an audit on. We've also performed an audit, you will hear us refer to a single audit. It's the audit of the federal programs. And so in looking at your federal programs, we review that for compliance. Are the dollars being spent appropriately? Are there controls in place to make sure that the dollars you're receiving, they're being spent where they're supposed to be spent, but more importantly, they're supporting documentation that supports why it's being spent. And there were no compliance findings regarding that, so you should be extremely happy because under compliance, it's either right or wrong when we're reviewing it. And for you, there was nothing we needed to disclose regarding that. You have very good systems here. Things that, as we go through, there are questions on. Jan always calls us and says, here's something I want to run by you. Let me make sure it's done now so you don't find it later, type of thing. And so, and because of that, when we do an audit and we can ask those sorts of questions, there's nothing that came across that we would be reporting out to the federal government that gave you those. So you'll find clean reports on it.
And I guess regarding food service and their child care fund, we ran surpluses in both of those as well.
Yes.
And the advice was to buy equipment with the surplus for food
Oh,
service.
we did that last year, yeah, we were
Right.
2 years ago, 17, 18.
Right.
So I got to look, hopefully we're not over that. I think we're good though, in terms of having to spend more. But when our child care fund, I always give Diane kudos, her reductions have paid off.
Good job, Diane.
Running good surplus there as well.
Well, I think we should make the greenhouse part of the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
You betcha.
I just texted Megan about that.
I think what you're referring to is the food service programs. There was a significant surplus in that again this year over.
That's what I thought I read.
Yeah, it says-
expenditure.
Right,
It's in here in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
okay.
give a comment on that. So
Right.
again,
It's
a
whether or not.
good problem to have.
Right.
But,
I gotta do the calculation whether or not we're gonna have to spend more, because we're only allowed, there's no formula, so.
Yeah, therefore, so what the.
Suzanne may have to buy some new equipment.
Right, so
Right,
what
that's
what the state does is they look at what your surplus is. And in total, their question is, they would expect you to never have greater than 3 months worth of expenditures being
Right.
held there.
Right.
If you do, you're gonna get a letter saying, well, what's your plan for spending these dollars? So in the past, when the district's gotten, Jan has scheduled out what that plan is regarding it. So in the past, where there's been some equipment purchased going forward. So that will always, that's what they look at for that. But this program's run very well. I don't see a lot of programs from a food service that make money, but make the kind of money we make. So your director does very good.
Anybody else got any questions, concerns with audit?
Just a thank you to Jan. Yes.
Thank you to Jan.
Thank you, Gus.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The last thing
Okay.
I'll give you is an invitation. I only have 4 of these, but it's a save the date for our school law and finance seminar coming up in January.
Oh, is that?
And you will be getting an email regarding
Perfect.
that.
Yes,
Thank you very
I've
much.
been going these. This is worth going.
It's a good one.
Yes, so every year what we do is we put on a seminar for all of our school districts in conjunction with a law firm that we work with, and half day is on accounting and the other half is on legal items that are affecting school districts. So it gives you an opportunity to ask questions, but not only that, hear what other districts are doing and what issues they're having, as those are topics of discussion during that. We try to do that every year.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have the education report with Dr. Dave.
First, I'm going to make a request that I stop following Jan, because every time she goes, with all this praise towards Jan, all the amazing work that she's, and I have to try to follow that. So, yeah, she's doing an awesome job. I'm going to share some information with you guys today, some data, some numbers, but I want to qualify this and do some editorializing first before we start seeing some of the data and the numbers, if that's okay. When we met last time, I explained to you that the state had embargoed a lot of the numbers. We couldn't share a lot of the numbers, so we were able to shift focus and talk about students beyond the numbers, and it was an exciting conversation. I don't want us to lose focus of that today. When we start talking about numbers and quantifying things, we're not quantifying students. We're not labeling students. This is just another data point so that we can look at everything that we do to try to monitor our progress. And today we're going to get the opportunity to see some things that are absolutely glowing, some of our amazing strengths. We're also going to see some opportunities, some areas that we need to have a focus on, and you'll hear a little bit about our plans going forward for what some of those opportunities are. Okay? Where are we going? Where are we and where are we going? That's for you, Melissa. She asked me to hashtag this and make this our new slogan. Something that's exciting to see. As we go through and we start to see some of the numbers. Something that I've been able to see as I've analyzed and started to synthesize the numbers and the data is Brandon School District is amazing in that wherever it focuses its energy, we see success. And there's this pattern. Wherever the focus is, the numbers follow. The focus and then the results. And a prime example is our first glowing example, the high school. This is extremely exciting to see. Last year, the high school received a lot of personalized attention. Dr. Outlaw, myself, Dan Stevens, Dave White, the entire high school team were getting together regularly to talk about programs, initiatives, how to make sure we were supporting struggling students, to make sure that we were reaching top-end students, and just making sure that the high school was really meeting its goals. And what's exciting to see is last year, tremendous growth from the high school. I'm going to try my best to break things down to you guys today without talking percentile scores and RIT scores and scale scores, and just try to make it simple so that we can all walk away with a common understanding. Last year's SAT scores showed huge market improvements over the prior year's SAT scores. That's the moral of the story. The EWR stands for Evidence-Based Reading and Writing, or the language arts portion of the SAT. The other half of the SAT is a math portion of the SAT. Total score you can get on an SAT is 1,600 points. So you get 800 in the ERW, 800 in the math. Brandon High School last year was able to show increases in both of those when you look at the aggregate or the average score. So on the right-hand side, you get that little delta, that little triangle, just that's +5. They went up 5 points in ERW, or writing and reading. They went up 14 points in math. Grand total of an increase of about 19 points overall. Now, that leads to lots of questions, like, well, how do you get 19 points? It's just kids tried harder. Did they get 19 questions, more questions right? And the answer is actually right here. The SAT breaks it down into subsections, so you can start to see where the strengths and some of the struggles are. What I'm going to be doing on future slides is simply comparing Brandon to the rest of the state of Michigan as our scorecard. Because we have one of our strategic goals, on the second half of the agenda, we're reminded that our goal is to be in the top 25% by the year 2025. So comparing ourselves to Michigan is a nice little benchmark, so we can see where we're going. In the 7 subsections on the SAT, Brandon High School outperformed the state in 5 out of the 7. Compare that to the prior year, then almost 3 out of 7. So we're showing progress. What's really exciting, and I'm going to say this from a systems approach, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the systems we're putting in place, is that the 2 areas where we are underperforming compared to the state, there's a systems answer. This isn't an issue with a classroom or a subject area. This is truly a 3rd grade through 11th grade issue that we're looking at, we're going to be addressing. The areas that we underperform, expression of ideas, standard English conventions. Standard English conventions, this is a simple one to understand. Nouns, pronouns, spelling, grammar when you're writing. That is actually the least amount of weight on the SAT. There are kids that are admitted to Harvard, Yale, Princeton every single year that don't pass the standard English conventions portion of the SAT, but still get high 1,500 scores. The expression of ideas area is actually the highest weighted area of the SAT. It's worth more than any other portion of the entire SAT. The expression of ideas component is basically, are students able to articulate themselves and have their own opinions that they can argue, as opposed to just copying evidence and citing textual evidence and saying, I saw this written here, so it has to be true, and regurgitating it back. Can they push back? Can they argue against an author? Can they find valid evidence? Can they say which evidence is more valid and least valid? That's our area of concern going forward, or our area of focus. Like I said, from the systems approach, the good news is that it's actually an area of focus beginning 3rd grade. So we look at this and say, okay, this isn't something that we have to work on at the high school. This becomes an area of focus we start on in elementary. And we started that conversation actually last year at the elementaries. We started seeing that pattern emerge. The next piece of this, again, strengths and opportunities. I'm going to share this with you so you can see where we are and where we're going. Again, where we focus, we see success. And I'll show you this in 3 or 4 slides down the road. This simply compares our success here in Brandon, again, against the rest of the state of Michigan. I actually shared some of these slides today with a new group that we have formed here called our Curriculum Council. It's teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade, various subject areas that come together to say, are we aligned? Are we working on the right stuff? What do we need to shift our focus on this year? And they had some amazing ideas, and you'll see that in just a second as well. On the left-hand column, we see check boxes that represent that we have a greater percentage of kids scoring proficient or quote-unquote passing the test, the MSTAT test, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in ELA. 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 8th grade. Our 2 areas that we did not quite meet the state was 6th and 7th grade. And that's passing the test or meeting that proficiency mark. You can see there are 2 other columns that don't have as many check marks. And if you think about the spectrum, if you will, where you've got proficiency or passing the test, meaning that bell curve, you got other kids that are way up on the end of the bell curve, advanced, that get that label. You got other students that might not necessarily be at proficient yet. We're starting to see that gap widen while the bubble, if you will, or the bell curve, continues to shift in ELA. We see the same sort of thing in math. See check marks for proficiency. 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, where we're outperforming the state. Advanced, and then special education. Now I'm throwing this out here just to give ourselves greater context so we can understand that middle portion. I'm going to introduce a new term to you just for point of reference. This is a term that our teachers are becoming more and more familiar with because it's a term that the state uses all the time when we're talking about student growth. It's an SGP, a student's growth percentile. What a student growth percentile represents is you take any average student or any student and you compare them to other students across the state that had the same starting point. and then they say, if there are 100 kids just like you, how many of those kids did you outperform? The goal is to get a score of 50 or better. A 50 would mean you kept pace with at the average kid that started the same place. The goal for a system is to have an SGP of greater than 50. If you have a score of greater than 50, that means you're moving and you're leapfrogging over other kids or other schools or other systems. In math and in ELA, the last 2 years, we had SGPs greater than 50. You can see our SGP in math is actually stronger or higher than our SGP in ELA, which again tells us that our bubble or that bell curve is continuing to shift and it's moving the correct direction. We're picking up more kids and moving in the middle. So what are we focusing on going forward? The areas in red, they're not on your slides because I met with the curriculum council today, a group of teachers, and had some exciting conversations. And Matt hasn't even heard this yet, and I think he's going to be excited when he hears some of this too. Again, heard from teachers from across the district. We sat around a little round table. This year, we're in year 2 of a new curriculum review process. So just like when we talk about no kid should slip through the cracks, and we want to have a one-to-one advocate for every single child, we're looking at doing the same thing for every classroom and every program. We want to make sure that we're not just addressing the squeaky wheel. So we have a process now where everything is constantly in review. And today we had the conversation because science, secondary science, was in the target, if you will, to be going through this full review this year. And as we looked at the data, the committee got together and said, no, I think we have some other areas that we want to look at. The stuff in black and gray was what I presented to them. For example, secondary writing, expression of ideas. I said, what if we focus on the high school for this? They said, no, it needs to be a K-12 conversation. I said, yes. Math, I said, how about a K-5 conversation about math? Let's have that be the focus. I said, no, that needs to be a K-12 conversation. Talked about K-8, increasing rigor and depth, so focusing on the advanced skills. And I said, K-8, they said, no, K-12. What's super exciting is we had high school and elementary teachers getting together saying, how can we compare our schedules so we can all meet together and be on the same page? That is huge. You have no idea how exciting that is. We have buildings now that are trying to work out schedules that everybody can be in the same room, so we have this constant continuum. We don't have an elementary program, a middle school program, and a high school program, and the teachers are asking for that. So that's super exciting, and that's the work we're going to be going, charting forth with the rest of this year. Questions? Comments? I know it's a lot of numbers. I tried my best to shrink them down.
I like the way you did come across. I mean,
Okay.
I felt it was a little more obtainable to see a bigger picture. So
Yeah.
it still didn't look so abstract, even though like that is.
Yeah.
That last slide, very abstract. Anybody got any questions, concerns? Good stuff. Okay. Keep up the good work,
Thank you very
teachers,
much.
staff.
They are working hard.
Yes, exactly. Okay, next we're going to go to our action items. Could I get a motion to approve our 2018-19 school district audit?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the 2018-19 school district audit results as presented.
Support?
Okay, any discussion on that? We just had a great opinion report. Okay, none. All those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Okay, next, approval, if I could get a motion for the 8th grade out-of-state trip to Washington, D.C.
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the 8th grade out-of-state overnight trip to Washington DC, October 21st through the 26th of 2020 as presented.
Support?
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Hendershot, do you want to come on up and brag about this trip again? Come on now.
Not brag about it for a second. You're taking the largest group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this year we have 100 people going on the trip, including our chaperones, 4 parents, so 91 students. That's a little over half of the class, the 8th grade class. So the community and the school have bought into the trip, and more people are going and planning on it. We're already planning next year's trip, which you're hopefully going to approve. We've begun setting up the dates to present the information to this year's 7th graders so that they can pay for the trip.
And what number year is this? 8, 9? I mean, it's been a while.
This would be my 27th trip, but for the Brandon Middle School sponsored trip, it would be the 8th trip.
8th trip.
This year would be 8, next year hopefully 9.
Mr. Cry, this is one of our best things I think that you brought back and did for our kids, because I think it's a great trip on what you say the itinerary is.
I get excited about it every year, and I'm in communication with our company. And, we had our parent meeting last week and had over 200 people in the gymnasium talking about it and turning in forms.
Anybody have any questions?
I have an eighth grader that's very excited to go, so it's been topic of conversation since the packet came in last year. So I think it's an awesome program. So thank you for all the hard work that you do to put that together, because it's truly a memory maker for sure.
The last thing I tell the kids before we come home is, when you become an adult and have children, make sure your children take the trip. And, Catherine, who was here earlier, that we hired, she was one of the students that we took back in '88, and we were talking about the other day, and it's it's a labor of love, and it's so wonderful for me, having been here a couple of years, to see students who have done it before and their kids are coming through, and they're sending their kids and making sure it's a priority in their lives.
You took my husband, so you're still doing this when you came in, so.
I didn't need to hear that.
Well, the program's working.
It is.
But you were only 12 then when you took her husband.
Yes.
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. You're going back to DC next year. Thanks, Mr. Hendershot. Okay, approval of bid for temperature control system upgrades.
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the bid recommendation from Wakefield Associates Incorporated to award the bid to Building Automated Systems and Services for temperature control system upgrades, controls commissioning for all district buildings in the amount not to exceed $250,812 as presented.
Support.
Okay, discussion?
This was part of the bid pack. This is not a new project. This has been on the radar for a long time. This is just a bid that goes along with all the planning that Jan and John did.
It's part of the energy bond, HVAC upgrades, yeah.
Anybody, any other questions?
Gonna save us some money?
Sure thing, and this came in under budget, so it's all good.
All good. Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. Okay, motion passes. Okay, if I could get a motion for the approval of policy 2410, prohibiting of referral or assistance.
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve policy 2410 prohibiting of referral or assistance as presented.
Support.
Okay, discussion.
This is mandated. This was a law that was passed in 2017, and we have until October 1st, 2019 to approve this exact policy. And this is what Neola, our policy company, is doing with all their districts. So it's the exact wording
So,
in all our districts.
several questions.
Okay.
One, this, you just got done saying, but just to clarify, this language is what we have to adopt in its form as it appears to us in order to comply with the law.
This is what Neola is recommending, so could they change some words within it? I'm assuming they could probably change some words within it. But this is what Neola has recommended us as the policy company to comply with the law.
And the date by which we have to comply is October 1st, coming up in
This October 1st.
2 weeks. What happens if we don't?
So there was a discussion among people, there was some discussion on this. There are penalties, potentially for districts going with funding. For not completing compliance.
Is there any grace period following the October 1st date, do you think?
No, it was a question that I asked. There were several people that were surprised at the timing, and no. No grace, any grace period. October 1st is what it needs to be done. Their grace period would have been from the passage of the law.
My concern is I really don't understand what it says. I hate to sound so dim, but when I read it and read it again, and I recognize that you, our administration, nobody, directly involved in our school district drafted it. But when I don't know what something says, and the scenarios that play out, when I try and fill in those blanks to determine what it says, I don't care for some of those scenarios because I think it runs the risk, in my opinion, realizing we may have our hands tied, but it runs the risk of possibly restricting what some of our team members are supposed to be doing. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that what they're supposed to be doing is directly assisting in this fashion. But what I'm suggesting is even a conversation with a parent that references the process could be construed, thank you, Cooper, could be construed the way I read this. What is assist? I can work with refer, that's a little more direct for me, but I can still argue with it. However, if I was limited to only argue with one word, it would be the word assist, because that could take on meanings with unintended consequences on the role that our counselors, I think, of directly, immediately play if our students come to them. And they need to even have a conversation, which would pull in parents immediately, they would be doing all of the right things and still get caught up in a violation of this policy. So I'm not being difficult for difficult's sake. I just don't know what it means. So what do I do with that?
So that portion of it is directly from the law that was passed. So it says pupil refers a pupil for an abortion or assists a pupil in obtaining an abortion. And I agree that there's not specifics.
Those are the
on
laws.
That's the way the statute's written.
The definition between information and referring, where is that? Very gray.
It may have to be decided by the courts. I mean, not to say that we wouldn't ever want to go there, but if that's the wording on the law.
So if we don't do this, we could have funding without.
$100,000.
That's why I said our hands are tied. But for the record, it's a poorly crafted bill, poorly written, none of which is in our control. And now understanding why Neola drafted this policy in the fashion they did, it's just troublesome. And so
It's troublesome for both ways in a way, because the way it reads, it doesn't say you must go and investigate this. It's just sort of saying, if you believe an employee violated this, then you would act. But again, it's so up in the air, because like you say, if somebody gave information, this superintendent may say that's okay, but the next one could walk in or somebody else find that a violation. But
What can our support staff do with this? Like, let's say our counselors were having to deal with this, and I mean, this is law now. Where are they going to go to get their information, and how to specifically speak so that we're providing the best services to our students in situations like that, but without themselves
without running afoul of the policy?
Yeah, I mean, where's their clarification?
And doesn't the law apply even if we don't have the policy?
the law does apply.
I mean,
The law applies no matter what.
Right.
The $100,000 penalty for our school district applies if we don't have a policy to discipline.
Right.
And if one of our employees takes a student to a clinic and she has an abortion, and we don't have this policy in place, we have nothing to hang on that. Because some people would feel that would probably be too much that any of our staff should be doing. But again, I think that we could be in agreement with. But like I said, when you get down to just giving information as to where that fits in, if at all, again, my initial was overt acts that lead to there and assist in that, but not information with a parent involved. But again, that clarification's not there.
I think it comes down to, there's no way for us around this table to decipher exactly what was intended or how it's going to be enforced and carried out in defining what these terms mean.
I think what's crystal clear is that the law says that our people should not be assisting people to steer towards abortion. And the penalties, and all this, that's what they're making us have penalties complete. And I think even before this law, I think that's not something you would refer people if they had decisions to make to people within the government agencies, counties, health services, places like that, school counselors. This is not a topic with school counselors.
Make no mistake.
No,
I'm not suggesting that overt acts are taken. I'm suggesting that this language has unintended consequences, and it captures certain intended and expected communications between certain members of our staff, that's their specific role. And again, I immediately think of counselors, or just a trusted confidant, a teacher that someone feels comfortable to go to, and they have a conversation. That staff member even says the word abortion as relayed to her or him by the student in question, and in reaching out to the parents as the proper next step, has to relay that conversation, and that's all she's doing. I know I'm taking this narrow to an extreme, a stupid extreme, to identify the issue at hand presented by this. So, enough said. I guess I feel I have no choice, but for the record, I think the statute is poorly drafted, the policy is all drafted to be consistent and address the issues in the statute is poorly drafted. I would love to have a conversation with, to talk about how maybe that they could assist school districts to still support their staff in carrying out responsibilities that they have. So let me know if you want me to do that.
Can we amend this? If we say this is okay now, can we amend it after the conversation?
Absolutely, that's what I was thinking too, that the policy, or you could come up with a wording that would still fall within the guidelines of not violating.
We're guided by the law.
No, but you're guided by the law, but if there was something that could be more, I don't know if we use the word specific, put in our policy, because we're still under the guidance of the law, that we could go and make it more branded, appropriate, or something that you would feel is more clarifying. Because we don't want our staff to get in trouble, fair to say.
This is not the law, this is Neola's interpretation of the law.
No,
But the words are in
they're
the
basically
statute.
taking it from
Yes.
here. It's all shall, it's not may, it's shall, it's got financial penalties, the no less than 3%, it's directly out of the law. It's basically, they've taken the law and made a policy.
So the consequence here would be determined by the board or by any officer, agent, or
Looks like it's a
employee?
due process by the superintendent shall conduct.
The third
Okay,
sentence
I was
down.
going underneath it,
Yeah, the third sentence down.
So the superintendent would be the one interpreting this very gray wording up here.
I mean, it even includes us.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because in the fourth one, then it
Yeah.
becomes,
That we could be,
Oh, yes,
we could be violating
yes.
our own policy. This is a policy that is that we're underneath also.
so if we don't do this by October 1st,
We're
would
subject
we
to a $100,000 fine.
immediately?
That's the way it reads. So,
It's not really fair to force you to do something if you don't like something.
there's lots of laws.
I was gonna say, when I said, let's
Don't
vote
figure.
no on the three titles, Jan said we'll go, it's against the law. I mean,
So here we are. We have the motion.
yeah, we have the motion.
And we
Any
have
other
discussion
discussion?
to no satisfaction. I don't like it.
Okay,
And here we go with a major yes. Woo!
okay. You want to roll call
But
vote on this?
to John's point, is there flexibility in amending that interpretation?
I think that's something I don't know the answer, but I think it should be investigated and see if there is that room. I then will have, if one of those, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't, because I feel that if the policy is intended to reflect the statute and compliance with the statute, and then you mess with the policy, then you go to enforce the policy, and there's any conflicts between the policy and how the law is written, the law is going to win. And so at the end of the day, it may feel good to go through the exercise and have no good consequence.
So there is a legitimate area that we could look at, that would be administrative guidelines, which is clarifying, and it takes policy and puts it into practice.
Sure.
So maybe that's the area that we clarify and get that specificity that you're talking about.
Right. I think
Policy is, like you said, we need to be aligned, we need to be in compliance with the law.
Yes.
And then just how we will implement, that might be an area that you can clarify.
That we can work through that. All righty.
Okay.
Support.
Okay, all those, any other discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
opposed say no. The motion passes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I say yes, say something with it? Because I
You
want
can
it
go
to
ahead.
be
No, go ahead and.
for sure that my yes is because we have $100,000 literally handcuffed to our wrists right now on this. But this is I'm not done with as a board member, and I know we often say we'll circle around back to it, and some stuff doesn't, go around the cul-de-sac and circle back, but I feel like we strongly need to circle back to this and make sure that we're definitely having more time to look at it, understand it, and see where we can go with it for ourselves, the staff, students, community, everyone, so.
Okay. Okay, next, I have citizens input. Mr. Warren. And Mr. Warren, just a quick reminder, 3 minutes. Talk to the board.
Thank you for speaking. Well, I don't even know where to start, but thank you for letting me come up to speak. I'm still not done dealing with the matters that I've been dealing with the district and my kids. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm here for my kids and nobody else. I want a good education. I can't deal with the lies being told, swept under the rug, and everybody going on about their way. I told you about the incident about my daughter. So I took her out of this district. She's doing excellent now. She has a counselor. She tried to commit suicide. Because of this incident, I made a police report. I have the police report number. My daughter is here too. So nobody's asked to hear anything. Made a police report. The principal told me that the superintendent said, well, since the police is involved, we have to leave it alone until they're done with it. I went back to the police. He said, well, I did my part. There's nothing else I can do about it. What is it going to take for somebody to listen and understand that this is a serious matter? My daughter had to get admitted to a hospital. That something happened to one of my kids. I'm not going to hear the end of it. That's a serious matter. She was an all-A student in this district. Ended up with 2 Bs at the end of the year. Cut marks on her. Had to go to the hospital. And it's ridiculous. And then now I'm being told my witnesses, they're saying different. No, it's a bunch of lies. My youngest son being harassed by teachers. Said something about that last year. Nobody said anything else about it. They talked to the teachers. Teachers said whatever they wanted to say and left it alone. I have my youngest son here. People don't listen. They just want to hear what they want to hear and we go on by it. What is it going to take for them to really understand that these kids that need help, give them the help that they need and stop sitting here saying, oh, we're doing our job, when they're not. These kids didn't ask to grow up in this world, come into this world. They have to deal with this. I'm a single father doing this on my own. That's the only reason all the kids are here, because I don't have nobody to watch them. I didn't even want to bring them here. But something has to, and I was going to leave, because y'all said this was at the end of the, but it has to be brought up, because this can't keep. If I go to sleep one night and wake up and my daughter is gone, I don't know what I would do. That's the reason why I stayed, because somebody has to hear this. When the last meeting I came to, I looked at the meeting on the YouTube. They cut my part off. They're hiding stuff around here, and I can't keep dealing with this. My son, he's a handful. At school, they're making him sit on the swing set while everybody else is playing. When it's time for him to get his extra, like to take my class or extra time or whatever, he's in the office. Mr. Dan called him out. I had to get on my son.
Okay, we're getting close to the 3
Okay,
minutes now.
regardless if I don't care too much for her, that's an adult. You listen to her. Leave with her and she'll take you to go have your little special time, whatever. But he told her now, I'm gonna go back to class. That was never brought up to my attention. He should have, somebody should have called me and told me that.
Okay.
So his time, he went into the office. And that's what he does his time. This is getting ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
And there's way more
And the
to
struggles,
it.
I'm glad with your daughter, you say she's now found a good place that's worked
But
out.
something has to give though. They can't sit here and just put it on each other and nobody's doing nothing about it. And that's why these kids are committing suicide, because it's being left unattended. But everybody swear they're doing their job. And I'm not saying everybody. Most of these people they act like they're doing their job, but they're really not. And I wouldn't be here if they were.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you.
Okay, next, can I get a motion to go into closed session, please?
Yes.
That's it.
Move the Brandon Board of Education approve to enter into closed session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations as presented and to receive and discuss an attorney-client privilege document.
Support, okay. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Sarah Allen?
Yes.
Melissa Clark, yes. John Chartier?
Yes.
Marion Dwyer?
Yes.
Lisa Caluna?
Yes.
Diane Sultan?
Yes. Okay, does anybody need a quick break? Let's do a 1 minute break.